Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about a massive, fast-growing financial market that's, well, pretty much completely hidden from public view. It's a whole world of high-growth tech and just incredible value, but it's one that has traditionally been totally off-limits to almost everyone. So to really get a sense of the scale here, just look at this number, $162 billion. That's the size of the private equity secondary market. And what is that? It's basically the marketplace where investors trade stakes in private companies, the next potential giants of tech and innovation. And now look at this number, less than 3%. That's the tiny, tiny fraction of that entire $162 billion market that's actually accessible to most of us, what the industry calls the wealth segment. So you've got this incredibly valuable market over here, and most investors over there, with a huge locked door right in between. So why is it so exclusive? And could a new technology finally be the key to unlocking it? Okay, let's dive in. First off, to really understand what's at stake, you have to appreciate the sheer scale and, frankly, the incredible speed of what we're talking about. I mean, this market isn't just big, it is growing at a blistering pace. We're talking 45% year over year. To put that in perspective, that's more than 3 times faster than the broader private equity market itself. And with projections hitting $185 billion by 2025, this thing is like a freight train of value creation. Which, of course, brings us to the crucial question. If this market is so valuable and it's growing so fast, why are most of us stuck on the outside looking in? Well, the answer really comes down to 3 major walls that have been built around it. The first wall, and it's maybe the most obvious, is just plain access. The price of admission is steep. We're talking a typical minimum investment of $500,000, sometimes more. And even beyond that, the best deals, they don't happen on some public exchange. No, they're off-market, which means they require these deep insider networks that most people just don't have. Okay, so wall number 2. Let's say you did have the money and the connections. The process itself is a nightmare of inefficiency. It's just bogged down by layers of middlemen, brokers, advisors, funds, all adding their own delays and taking a cut. Trying to get a single transaction done can take weeks or even months. It's just incredibly slow and clunky. And finally, the third wall is that the products themselves are often a really terrible fit for individual investors. Asset selection isn't driven by what you might want to buy, like a piece of a hot tech company. It's driven by what the big funds want to sell. And they're usually wrapped in these complex structures with high fees, and worse, your money is often locked up for anywhere from 3 to 12 years. So how in the world do you break down these massive walls? Well, the proposed solution is a technology you've definitely heard of, tokenization. This is that new kind of key we mentioned right at the start. So what is it? In really simple terms, tokenization is about creating a secure digital receipt, a token that represents your ownership in a real-world asset. Think of it like a digital deed for a stake in a private company. And once it's digital, it can be bought, sold, and managed way, way more easily. And the process itself is actually pretty straightforward. First, you take a real-world asset, like that private equity stake, and you place it in a secure, regulated reserve, say at a bank. Then you mint or create digital tokens on a one-to-one basis. So each token represents a direct, fractional share of that real asset sitting in the reserve. And this is how tokenization just tears down those 3 walls we talked about. All of a sudden, you can slash those investment minimums from $500,000 down to as little as $10,000. It makes distribution so much simpler, making these assets available through platforms you already use. And it creates a clear path toward a market that's way more efficient and liquid for everybody. Okay, but it's important to know that not all tokenization is created equal. When we talk about this tech, there are really 2 main paths being discussed right now, and each one has its own set of pros and cons. So you've got the easy path, which is tokenizing public stocks. The info's already out there, the regulations are clear, and the big win is you get 24/7 global trading. Cool. But a lot of people argue the truly powerful path is tokenizing private assets. Now, this is harder. There's less public info. The regulatory stuff is more complex. But the benefit? It's revolutionary. You're talking about unlocking completely inaccessible assets for the very first time. And this right here brings us to the real heart of the matter. Because this conversation is about so much more than just a new financial product. It's really about who gets to own a piece of the technologies that are fundamentally reshaping our entire world.
This quote really gets to the core of the argument. Right now, there's a lot of fear around technologies like AI. But what happens if more people have a direct financial stake in its success? If you own a piece of it, your perspective changes. Giving more people ownership could fundamentally change how society engages with and adapts to these powerful, disruptive forces.
And that question is incredibly urgent when you look at the numbers. The ownership of the most valuable AI companies, the ones valued in the hundreds of billions, is so incredibly concentrated. More than 99% is held by private and institutional investors. That leaves less than 1% for public and retail participation. Just think about that.
And that's really why this all matters so much. We're not just talking about a more efficient way to trade things. We're talking about a potential shift from a system where a select few own the future to one where many, many more people can have a real stake in it, sharing in the growth and the innovation that's going to define our world.
And so that leaves us with this final, really powerful question to think about as this technology keeps developing. Could this be the tool that finally changes who gets to build and own our future? I guess we'll have to see. Thanks for digging into this with me.